Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Today I want us to continue with the next part of genetics. We uploaded the first lesson. This is the second lesson. Now the second lesson today we will be discussing variation and its types and the causes of variation. Now class, today I want us to look at this subtopic called variation. And as you know, members of the same species, they show differences in their characteristics. And therefore, variation is the differences shown by species of the same members of the same species in their characteristics. And therefore, we say when we're defining variation, we simply say it is the difference in characteristics of the members of the same species. Difference in characteristics of the members of the same species. And this, therefore, you may have realized that species of this do show variation in their characteristics. And therefore, it is very important aspect that we discuss. And therefore, this variation has types. Let's look at the types of variation. Very good. Types of variation. Having said variation as the differences in the characteristics of the members of the same species, it is of great concern we discuss the types of variation. Basically, we have two types of variation. That is, we have continuous. We also have discontinuous variation. Continuous variation and discontinuous variation. Now, let's start with the first one, which is called the continuous variation. What is a continuous variation? Continuous variation. Continuous variation is a type of variation in which the organism exhibits a wide range of differences with no intermediates. There is a type of variation in which organisms exhibit a wide range. They exhibit a wide range of variations with no intermediate. Very good. Now, let's look in details. What does this statement entails? That in continuous variation is a type of variation in which the organism in a particular species exhibits a wide range of variation with no intermediate. For instance, a variation like the height is a good example. Like the height. The height does not have any clear-cut difference as to we can see that this organism is purely tall or purely short. Sometimes we can find an organism which is short like that, let's say a height of 3, 2, 5 up to a higher level, higher heights. And therefore, a height is among the examples of continuous variation simply because it has no intermediate. And when you plot a graph of height against organisms, we're going to see that there will be a normal distribution curve. And therefore, we say there's no clear-cut difference, or rather, there's no intermediate, and they show a wide range of differences. Good. Another example of continuous variation is body weight. Another one is size of fruits. Now, and etc. Leaves, size of leaves, and like that. Now, what causes continuous variation? Continuous variation class is basically caused by many genes. And therefore, again, the expression of these genes phenotypically, or the external expression of these things, are affected by the environment. How? We said continuous variation is a type of variation in which the organisms exhibit a wide range of differences with no intermediates, as in the case of the height, where we said in height, the organisms have a wide range of height. Let's say the height of 2, 3, 5, let's say up to 16, 18, like that, isn't it? Body weight, we have organisms with 20, 30, 35, 36, 80, 100, 100 something. That is a wide range. We cannot see any clear-cut difference, or rather, there is no any intermediate as to what we can put them into specificity. Very good. Now, another important thing that we need to know is that what causes continuous variation. And therefore, we say continuous variation is being caused by many genes. It's being caused by many genes. Multiple genes cause the continuous variation. Again, the external expression of these genes are influenced by environmental factors. For instance, let's take the case of an identical twin. The identical twin, they have similar genotype. But when these identical twins are subjected to different environmental conditions, or one of them is being subjected to better diet while the other one lacks the better diet, we're going to realize that one of them is going to grow big in the body size while the other one will not. Yet they have the same genotype. Because that's the body weight is basically, and the height is basically, a type of continuous variation. Now, being it a type of continuous variation is being affected by multiple genes, or rather many genes. And therefore, if the two identical twins are subjected to different diets, such that one is being fed with a good diet with sufficient nutritional values and the other one lacks, we are going to realize that the one which was given the better diet is going to grow big while the other one will not. Yet the genotype is the same. That is now proved by the aspect of continuous variation, where the organisms have the same genes, but the expression of that genes, or rather the betterment of that genes, is influenced by the environmental conditions. Another aspect is this, that the identical twin brothers, those identical twins, have again the same IQ. But again, if these two identical twins are subjected to different learning environment to such an extent that one amongst them is given access to a better learning facilities, no wonder one of them will be smarter than the other. Yet the IQ intelligent quotient, the intelligent quotient IQ is the same. Yet the IQ is the same. But after some time, when they are subjected to different learning environments, we are going to realize that one amongst them will be smarter than the other. Reason being, the expression of these genes are subject to the environment. These genes, the external expression of these genes are made better by the environmental factors. And therefore we say continuous variation is being caused by many genes. And therefore, these genes, the external expression of these genes, are influenced by environmental factors. Caused by many genes, and influenced by environmental factors. Right. That's done for the continuous variation. Now let's come to the discontinuous variation. Discontinuous variation. Discontinuous. Now, discontinuous variation is another type of variation in which the organisms shows differences with clear-cut differences with no intermediates. In discontinuous variation, organisms or species, they show clear-cut differences with no intermediates. Organisms show clear-cut differences with no intermediates, For example, what does that mean? For instance, this one, discontinuous variation, is a type of variation where species show clear-cut differences with no intermediate. For instance, an organism, let's say, can either be, let's look at the sex of an organism. An organism can either be male or female. There's no intermediate. And in such, we call a discontinuous variation where the organisms show clear-cut differences with no intermediate. And as an example is the sex. There, an organism can either be a male or a female. Another good example of this discontinuous variation is the one called the blood group. How? Because an organism can either belong to the four of the blood groups, number one. That is, an organism can be of blood group A. An organism can be of blood group B. An organism can be of blood group AB, or an organism can be of blood group O. There's no any other thing apart from this. An organism can either be of blood group A, B, AB, or O. That's a clear-cut difference with no intermediates. The same way the sex. We also have again tongue rollers. An organism can be a tongue roller. Those who can turn their tongue into U-shaped tongue rollers, or non-tongue rollers. An organism can either roll its tongue or cannot roll its tongue, and therefore we say tongue rollers. Earlobe is also another aspect, the earlobe. The earlobe can either be free or attached. Is also another example of discontinuous variation. Another example of discontinuous variation class is the presence of long hairs. Presence of long hairs in the nose and the ear pinna and the ear pinna. Now, those are some of the examples of discontinuous variation. Now, in summary, we can say that variation is the differences in the characteristics of the members of the same species. For instance, an organism like the human species, let's look at the human species. They have different skin color, they have different heights, they have different body weights, right? Now, we have various types of variation. We have two types of variation, basically. We have the continuous variation and the discontinuous variation. And the continuous variation is a type of variation where the organism exhibits a wide range of differences with no intermediates. Correct? What does that mean? For example, like a height, 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, like that. Weight, body weight, it can be 40, 50, 60, 65, 63. It does not have any intermediates. Size of fruit, size of the leaves. Now again, what are the causes of these continuous variation? Continuous variation is basically caused by many genes. Again, very important point. Yet they are caused by many genes, but the external expression of these genes is basically influenced by the environmental factors. And we explained the case where the two identical twins are being subjected to different diets, and therefore we have seen their differences in their weight, where one is having more weight and the other one is having lesser weight as compared to the other one, yet they have the same genotype. Another one is about their IQ, such that one of them is given access to better learning facilities, while the other one is not, and therefore you don't see one amongst them being smarter than the other, yet the IQ is the same. No wonder brothers do not look alike at times. Good. Now, let's come to the discontinuous variation. Is a type of variation in which the species show clear-cut differences in their characteristics with no intermediate. For instance, the sex. An organism can either be male, female, blood group A, B, AB, or there's no another blood group. The tongue rollers, they can roll the tongue or not. The earlobe can either be free or attached. You have the presence of long hairs in the nose or in the ear pinna. Now, I would like us to discuss about causes of variation. Causes of variation. What are the things that causes this variation class? Causes of variation. Causes of variation. Causes of variation. Now, let me list them. There are three factors that causes variation. Number one that causes variation is called gamete formation. Gamete formation. Number two that causes variation is called fertilization. Fertilization. And the last one is called mutation. These three factors are the ones that causes a variation in the organisms. Either gamete formation, fertilization, and mutation. And what we say, let's discuss one by one. Let's start with the first one, that is the gamete formation. The gamete formation. Gamete formation. Now, gamete formation, they influence variation in two ways. That is, number one, crossing over. Crossing over. Roman two, we have independent assortment. Independent assortment. Good. Now, let's start with the first one, crossing over. I'll not be writing, but I'll just be explaining. Crossing over. Good. If you look, crossing over takes place in process 1 of meiosis, right? Crossing over takes place in process 1 of meiosis. Meiosis where there is a type of cell division in which the parent cell divides into 4 daughter cells, each containing half the number of chromosomes as the parent cell. And therefore, during process 1 of meiosis, crossing over takes place. How? The homologous chromosomes, let's look at the homologous chromosomes like this. Now, just a rough sketch of the chromosomal structures. These are the homologous chromosomes. These are called the sister chromatids. Now, this one and this one are not sister chromatids. They are called non-sister chromatids. Now, what happens is, during process 1 of meiosis, these homologous chromosomes lie side by side as bivalent. They lie side by side, such that you're going to see that this this one is going to lie here, like that, right? Therefore, we're going to have exchange. Now, when this one lie here, we're at a point called chiasmata. At a point called what? Chiasmata. These are the homologous chromosomes. These are the homologous chromosomes. They are in prophase 1. Now, prophase 1, what happens is this chromatid is going to lie side by side with this chromatid. This one is going to lie side by side with this chromatid, and they form bivalent. And again, guess what happens? This one, they undergo something called breakage. They undergo breakage. Once they undergo breakage, genetic materials is being exchanged. Genetic materials is being exchanged. And when genetic materials is being exchanged, there will be variation. Because this one was having some genetic information, this one was having some genetic information, and these two are not sister these are just chromosomes. Now they will be, and these are non-sister chromatids, and therefore they're going to exchange the genetic information, and therefore they're going to bring out variation. For instance, what we are saying is that these are chromosomes, homologous chromosomes. This chromatid is going to lie side by side with this chromatid. Breakage occurs at the point of contact that is called the chiasmata. And when breakage occurs, genetic materials are being exchanged. And when genetic materials are being exchanged, guess what? Variation occurs. Right. Now, let's look at the second one, independent assortment. Independent assortment also takes place in metaphase of meiosis. Now, what happens is, in independent assortment, the homologous chromosomes align themselves at the equator of the spindle fibers. And what happens when they align at the equator of the spindle fibers? These homologous chromosomes, which are aligning at the equator of the spindle fibers, they segregate or rather separate to the opposite daughter cells, and they're going to form gametes. And therefore, they're going to combine with another homologous chromosome, another chromosome from another place, and they bring about variation. That is how gamete formation brings about variation, right? Again, fertilization. The next thing is fertilization. Fertilization, what we know is that is the fusion of the nuclei of male gametes and that of the female gamete to affect the process of gamete formation. And therefore, what we know is that the nucleus of the female gamete fuses with the nucleus of the male gamete. And therefore, the male gamete and the female gamete, they have different genetic information. And therefore, when they combine, you're going to have also another variation. And lastly is about mutation. Mutation is the spontaneous change in the genetic makeup of an organism. And the spontaneous change in the genetic, it is the spontaneous change in the genetic makeup of an organism, and it is caused by the mutagens. It can also be inherited. It can also be mutagens. It can cause mutation, can cause by mutagens, or it can be inherited. Now, I would like to end my lesson there for today, but I will wish my learners to get updated on my daily uploading of videos into my channel so that you view more, you like, subscribe, and share so that we make an improvement on the content delivery. And also when the number gets bigger, guess what? I'll also be more effective and more engaged, because when you see that the learners are not interested, sometimes you also take a step back when you see they are not interested in you. But when you see the learners are interested, they have a lot of energy, vigor, and enthusiasm to watch your videos, you are likely to upload more and more. And I will wish the learners, more so those who are doing their KCC exams, to get at whatever I'm trying to upload in my video. Also likely in the comment section to communicate what to do next and which areas should I lay emphasis on. and I will highly appreciate. And finally, we are Muslims, and I would like us to abide by the Islamic rules and regulation. And guess what? Everything will be smooth for you. And basically, I always tell my learners, there are 3 basic principles for you to excel in life. And that is, number 1, you work towards the attainment of the pleasures of your Creator, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 2 is that you be obedient to the highest degree to your parents. And number 3 is you just don't cause any harm to other human beings. You stay away. Unless you want to help them, that is good. But anything aside from them, harming them, backbiting them, just leave that. And rest assured, you'll be having a successful life. Wish you all the best and have successful life in this world and in the hereafter. Thank you very much.